Sticking with the markets, investors were also closely watching political tensions in North Korea. The U.S. sent stealth fighter jets to South Korea, and the U.S. Navy shifted a guided missile destroyer in the Pacific. Now, these moves come as North Korea's leader, Kim Jong Un, said over the weekend he's entering a state of war with South Korea and threatened military action against South Korea and the United States. Joining us now to talk about what all this could mean for the global economy and the markets, Ian Bremmer. He's the president of the Eurasia Group. It's a global political risk research and consulting firm. Ian, let me just begin with a very basic question that a lot of people are probably wondering. What does Kim Jong Un really want?
Well, it's very clear that his state of war does not preclude doing business with the South. Their joint industrial park in Kaesong in North Korea is still open. So it's not like he's about to start launching rockets into South Korea. I think what he clearly wants is more money, more respect, and he probably wants a restart of negotiations with the United States from a position of greater strength. He has clearly failed on absolutely every one of those counts over the last 2 weeks. And I think that's what's actually agitating observers, not the notion that we're at the precipice of war.
This guy is new, Ian. He's 28, 29 years old, maybe 30 if we're to believe the press reports. Where is his off-ramp? How does he get out of this and not lose face with the generals who have so much power in his country?
You know, the funny thing, he's actually the longest standing head of state in East Asia compared to Xi Jinping, Shinzo Abe, or President South Korea, President Park in South Korea. He's got the longest run of power, but he's only been in place for about a year, 29, 30 years old. And the question of how he backs up the truck is an interesting one because, look, it's not hard for him to do that in terms of his people because they've got extraordinary propaganda, and he can say white is black and probably get away with it. The real question is, how does he look to the military? How does he look to the political leaders as everything he's done over the past months has failed? And so if he backs off, do we start to see instability in the regime? And if he feels the need to continue to provoke, at what point does that lead to the kind of action that actually really is dangerous, that does blow up a ship, or, you know, he does actually take an action that requires South Korean or U.S. military engagement? I don't think we're there yet, but you know, that has to be an issue that we are now in the markets watching closely in a way that a couple months ago, frankly, we didn't care.
Let me ask you, Ian, something more on the business side of all this, because we know that South Korea is a big economy and it's a big player in the whole tech supply chain. So if there are any disruptions, I mean, they supply everything for the components that we need for TVs and cell phones and computers. If there's any kind of disruption here because of the political side of the equation, what kind of economic threat is there?
Well, it's one of the largest economies in the world, and it's very integrated with the West in terms of supply chain and direct trade. South Korea matters, and a lot of American companies have a lot of investments over there. They've got a lot of expats over there, and so far, nothing's changed. If we were to start to see North Korea really implode, and I think more likely than them blowing up the South is that the regime starts to fall apart, and then you see refugees and you see major tensions between the U.S. and China. Then suddenly South Korea is in a very bad place. The equity markets would come off very dramatically and very suddenly, and supply chains would be very disrupted. Certainly the kind of disruptions we saw after the Fukushima incident in Japan, where suddenly, you know, you had Toyota having huge problems with production all over the world. I mean, you know, you'd see, you know, major electronic manufacturers globally suddenly shorthanded in terms of products. That would absolutely happen in that environment. North Korea is just not a stable place, and it's an issue we should watch out for.
Okay, we will be watching it. Thank you so much, Ian. Ian Bremmer, President of the Eurasia Group.